Well, it's good to be back with you after a couple of weeks off. I had to go to Vegas to check things out over there, and everything's still operative. Except I was telling Joe before the show started, Heidi, they're just overloaded with fat people.
Oh, my goodness.
Fat people and 7-foot-tall guys. It was just
You're
weird.
such a sensitive person.
Fat's fat. They know they're fat. I mean,
Oh,
we're
my
talking
goodness.
300-pound moose running around up there. I mean, in other words, I go every year, but I mean, it just was an unusual collection, you know?
Collection. Wow.
Yeah. Well, it was just
How
like
very
a herd
Christian of you. I'm sorry, Catholic of you to say such things.
Well, look, if they're hippos, they're hippos. It's not my fault. I didn't make them that way. But it was enough that it was really striking.
You need to say 20 Hail Marys and 10 Our Fathers for this.
Not really. He knows they're fat. I mean, you can be all the Catholic you want, but fat's fat. I didn't make them that way. But anyhow, it was an unusual collection of folks. But now here's some hot off the press news from CBS News tonight. The evil, filthy Boston Red Sox were using electronic eavesdropping to sneak up on my Yankees and catch the signs.
That's headlining news with Kim Jong-il acting ill and this hurricane coming. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, but I hate the Red Sox. They've been my enemies. They're like the ancient enemy. I've been rooting against them for 40 or 50 years, you know. At any rate, okay, maybe it isn't top of the line news, but it was on CBS News. And on that same note, Heidi, San Antonio, pretty big town, it's like the 12th or 13th biggest town in the country, is out of gas all the way.
Wow.
Now, where I am in the Fort Worth area, it's okay. They got gas. But San Antonio is flat out. That's over 1 million people, and it's rough. And Hurricane Irma, which is a Category 5, is steaming into Florida in the next couple of days.
Crazy.
180-mile-plus winds.
It's just, this unpredictable weather patterns, these are going to become more commonplace for that imaginary foe Trump calls, climate change. Do you believe in climate change? I'm curious.
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow.
But
you're defecting from the Trump line there.
Yes,
wow.
But there's things you don't understand, and we don't understand. The whole universe, the whole solar system, rather, has heated up because they can detect temperatures on Venus, Neptune, all of that. And nobody knows why that is. So
I remember
there's
not too
climate
long
change.
ago, maybe 10 years ago or so, you'd be able to turn on the news and know what the weather's going to be. Now, you can't depend on them for nothing. They can't get anything right unless it's staring them in the face. It's terrible.
Well, no, here it's pretty accurate, honestly. Of course,
you guys don't have a lot of changing. Yeah, over here it's so crazy. It's nuts.
Well, they're pretty good on telling you the rain and stuff. It's going to rain tomorrow. They're usually pretty accurate in that.
Not here.
No, well, I mean, every place is different. Every place is different. But this could really smack Florida, boy. Already the governor, Scott of Florida, is going crazy with prep work, which as much as he can do. But you got to understand, Miami's practically underwater anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't take anything to swamp Miami. I've seen 4 foot of water on Miami streets from just a tropical storm, let alone a Category 5 hurricane. And, it's a glugging going on. But I wouldn't want to be an insurance company in this time. I really wouldn't.
No.
State Farm's good. State Farm is big in Texas, too. They must just be taking a kicking. But, of course, they've got billions anyway. But now, Obama's little legacy, this DACA thing, is a big item in the news. It's been discussed in recent days. And, it's, you feel for kids and all this wringing of hands and all this stuff. But look. The dreamers and all that. Yeah. But I mean, I don't want wish them any ill, but this is not a grab bag for everybody in the world to come grab a hunk of America and steal the jobs and drive the price of housing up and the labor down. And it's a bunch of BS, Heidi. I mean, and it's just a lever because if the DACA kids get to stay here, then they'll bring Uncle Leo over and blah, 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 blah. And you don't live with all the immigration we have down here. And I've got nothing against Mexicans. I really don't. But I don't care if they're Canadians coming in here by the gazillion. It drives the price of housing up. It's a real hard issue.
Well, I do get torn on the issue on some things because, I understand the fight. I understand the argument, but I also understand what the laws are, and it's a touchy subject. And I've known people who did not know they were illegal and went to apply for college, and they're told then, by the way, you are not, and it's just like, what? I mean, parents hide these things from these kids.
Weird things can happen. I'll buy that.
It's sad.
There's a way around all this that everybody seems to be intentionally stupid, and I don't know why. Instead of all the wall stuff and wringing of hands, have E-Verify, okay, for employment. If you don't get verified in the national database, you're out.
Well, yeah.
And if somebody hires you,
it's the millionaire's fault for all this because they're the ones employing people that don't have papers.
Exactly. If you hire somebody that isn't E-Verified, you get one immediate fine of like $100,000. You don't like it, you do 5 years in the federal pokey and no parole. And that would stop it in the morning.
It would have stopped it a long time ago. It wouldn't have been so tempting.
Everybody's talked about E-Verify. Everybody's talked about that E-Verify nonsense for 7 or 8 years. Yeah. So what is the real problem here?
Taking money from the rich.
Well, what it is, I hate to say this, but look. You have to be reasonable. There's 500 million people that live in South America, okay? Mexico's another 100 million. That's 600 million. They can't all jam in here like a frat party, Heidi. They can't.
Oh, I know.
Well, yes, but everybody wants to, the poor dreamers. Well, go dream in Mexico.
Oh,
it's a country. Do it. Knock yourself out. Dream all you want. Well, I guarantee you, Heidi, if you were down there, they wouldn't give you a cheese sandwich.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the argument on both sides. I really do. It's a touchy one.
But why don't they pivot another way? Like, let's say Trump from his position. He doesn't want to hear all this sass about the wall. He's tired of that. Yeah. And he doesn't want to hear all this sass about, you're inconsiderate of the poor little dreamers. Well, by the way, Mexico is a country, supposedly. They can go down there and dream or do whatever they want to do down there. I mean, they got businesses. Work. Do it. They're moving all kinds of auto factories still down there. Go bust your butt at Ford factory down in Mexico. Knock yourself out. Dream down there.
One of my good friends, I actually asked her, I said, what if that would happen, that they would move everybody back? And I'm like, wow, you guys would build up that country to be serious competition, even more so. So, but it's, I don't know. It's touchy. It's a hard one.
It's all a bunch of BS what it is, Heidi. Come on now. I mean, there ain't 600 million people down those neck of the woods all starving in the street, or you hear about it's all you'd ever hear about. They're not. They just want to sell more drugs here.
Not only. That's not the only business going on.
Well, drugs and tortillas.
Oh, that's just low. That's low.
Well, it's true.
That's what, according to you.
Well, I live near all that. Well, anyhow, listen, we're coming up to the top of our first break. We'll be right back. Well, it's great to be back with Heidi. And Heidi, before we get into the subject matter, there was something in the American Airlines magazine I'll send you if I can get a way to do it. But It was a really cool story. This guy was like overseas somewhere, Australia or somewhere, and he was running across the desert, some kind of cross-country running he does. Uh-huh. And he comes across a stray dog, right? Mm-hmm. And the dog just adopts him. And the dog runs the whole circuit with him. And of course, he took it home with him. And it was really pretty cute.
Wow. That's cool. Kind of love an animal story.
Well, I mean, the dog just bonded with him. And by the time the end of the run was over, the dog wouldn't let anybody even come near him because it was like bonded,
Right, right. That's cool.
I would have taken one of my Chihuahuas with me, but I don't know how that happened. Now, I did see some people down there with dogs. I never got a chance to talk to them about how they, take them to go do their business and all that. I never did figure that out, but
wow.
Somehow they work it out. I didn't see where the casinos were set up for it, but maybe down on the Strip. But then I wasn't on the Strip. I was downtown on Fremont Street, so they must have something figured out. But,
pretty darn cool. Wow.
Anyway, we've got an interesting subject matter tonight, and it's
by a very strange and rare guest. Mm-hmm.
Yes, a very learned guest. Really, quite honored to have him. But
an honor.
Yeah. But what it is, Heidi, as an overall, it's on Eucharistic Miracles. And
yes, we got to roll out the red carpet first for this crazy rare guest of ours.
Yes, it's Kevin Cook, and he's got a master's in theology, and he's a
holy man. He loves everybody, in fact.
Yeah, he does. But
you have a master's in theology?
Yes, I do. No, I do. I really do.
I don't know if you've ever said that out loud or just in your head. What?
Yeah, I do have a master's in theology. Yeah.
Wow. Holy cannoli. Everybody.
Well, I was an ordained Anglican deacon at one time.
Wow. Well, I knew that you did something that was of the church, but then you fell away and went like rogue or something when you moved to Texas.
No, I just became, everybody ought to be. I mean, you have to be bonkers to do anything else. But I mean, once you learn all this, and that's why I speak of the Eucharistic Miracles thing, because Heidi, this is as real as the hand on the end of your arm. And of course, I've spoken on other issues, like we had the guy on the Shroud of Turin, Russ Briault, a few weeks back, and and there's a lot of really proven stuff. And of course, many times I've mentioned the tilma of Juan Diego, that's image of Mary that's on display at the Basilica of Guadalupe, and it's been subject to testing at Sandia Labs and all this, and it is a miraculous representation. There's no way to replicate it. And the Eucharistic miracle issue is pretty much the same thing, Heidi.
You got to tell all the background of it, because it's news to me. This is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And what I thought, the first part of the show, I thought I would give a little bit of rundown into some of the older ones to show how far back these things, go. And, about 5 of the old ones, and then 5 of the current ones of the last 25 years. And the first one I had was the miracle of Lanciano, that Lancino, was from the 8th century. And a priest in Lanciano, Italy, was actually experiencing doubts about the real presence of Jesus and the Eucharist. And saying in the Mass, "This is my body, this is my blood," etc. And he actually saw the bread and wine transform into real flesh and blood. The wine coagulated to 5 globules, and said later to be representative of the 5 wounds of Christ. And, word of the miracle spread. The local archbishop, even then, launched an investigation, and the church did approve the miracle. Now, interestingly, the flesh is still preserved to this day.
Wow.
A professor of anatomy, I'm not very good at Italian pronunciations, but Odoardo Linoli conducted a scientific analysis of the flesh in 1971 and concluded that the flesh was cardiac tissue. The blood appeared to be fresh blood as opposed to blood that was, old, and there was no trace of preservatives neither. And you can visit this at the Church of San Francisco in Lanciano, Italy to this day.
Wow, that's amazing.
See, that's the thing. These are not hidden in a monastery somewhere and, nobody knows what happened to it or, any of this double talk nonsense. Mm-hmm. This is available today. And that dates from the 8th century. And then the second one was the Corporal of Bolsena. And this was also an Italian event. And, basically it's on display in that city as well. But, these are issues that are real issues. And here's another Italian one. Go ahead.
How about getting, I mean, have these things any of them been tested for, say, DNA?
Yes, they have. They have.
Ooh.
Just like, well, we'll get into that as it develops.
Okay.
But third, there's the hosts of Siena, Italy, something I can pronounce at least. And this was on August 14th, 1730. The Catholics of Siena, Italy were attending a special festival on the eve of the Feast of the Assumption. Thieves entered the church of St. Francis, stole a golden ciborium where they keep the wafers, and it contained hundreds of consecrated hosts. 2 days later, somebody noticed something white protruding from the offering box at another church. The priests opened the box and found the missing hosts inside, entangled in cobwebs and dirt. I don't know why, who knows. But after being cleaned as much as possible, the hosts were paid in a new ciborium and taken back to the church for prayers of reparation and veneration. But that's not all that happened. The hosts were dirty, and of course they couldn't feed them to people in mass. So they were going to let them simply deteriorate. And over the next few decades, everyone was amazed to see the host did not deteriorate, but actually appeared fresh. Now, here's the kicker. The hosts remain in this state today, 285 years later, and can still be seen now at the Basilica of St. Francis in Siena, Italy.
Oh.
They've not deteriorated.
Wow.
It gets spicier than that, but this is just these older ones.
Right.
Now, there was one that happened at the miracle of, oh my goodness, these are some mouth-breaking names. Oh, here we go. Chiratakanam, India. That's not the easiest thing to say. And there was Eucharistic adoration in St. Mary's Parish, and 3 red stains materialized on the hosts. The priest didn't know what to do, and he placed the host back in the tabernacle. A few days later, he retrieved the host to examine it again, and the red stains had arranged themselves, and I'm looking at the photo of it right now, to look like the face of Jesus. He quickly found a photographer, and he photoed the hosts, and they're also available for, viewing. And now here's the 5th older one. The other one's a fairly new one, but these are like the lesser examples. Then we'll deal with the real specific and thoroughgoing examples.
Okay.
Eucharistic Miracle of Santarém from the 13th century in Portugal. And a woman was living in Santarém, Portugal, the 13th century, and was distressed that her husband was unfaithful to her. And she decided to consult a sorceress for help, and the sorceress told her the price of her services was a consecrated host. She went to Mass at the Church of St. Stephen and received the Eucharist on her tongue, removed the Eucharist from her mouth, wrapped it in her veil, and headed to the door of the church. Before she got out, the host began to bleed. Okay. All right. Now, when she got home, she put the bloodied host in a trunk. That night, a miraculous light emanated from the trunk. She repented of what she had done, and the next morning confessed to her priest. The priest came and retrieved the host and took it back to the church. After an investigation and approval of the miracle, the church was renamed Church of the Holy Miracle, and the bloodied host remains on display to this day in Italy.
So these are all like Catholic recognized miracles.
Yes, they are.
Like,
and that's not even the 5 ones last.
Wow.
Well, see, now understand the one thing I will say about Catholicism is they are the most exhausting devils when it comes to investigating something.
Right.
For example, oh Lord mercy, Medjugorje they're still wrestling with that after all these many years, and that apparition that was just approved, Our Lady of Good Help in Wisconsin, it took them like several decades to finally come to grips with it. In other words, they do not approve things willy-nilly. They do not. And in the book I wrote, I don't mean to interrupt, but the book I wrote, Marian Apparitions Are Real, there's like 2,000 different mentions the International Marian Research Institute of apparitional events that they've looked into, and only 13 have been approved out of a couple thousand.
Do you think that maybe that might be limiting some of the knowledge out there of other
It could be.
miracles because
It could
they
be, yeah.
scrutinize so much, and sometimes when you're looking into the eyes
Well,
of a
I
person
know.
and many
I
witnesses, you got to
know.
wonder, like, my goodness.
Well, now
what
I agree with you, Heidi. I mean, I have
Yeah,
to agree. You have to be realistic. I mean, even the FBI has to get on with it sometime. And hey,
right.
but well, if all I'm saying, maybe yes, they err too much on the side of caution. I'll certainly admit that. To take decades and decades to come to a conclusion
Well,
was kind of
and you're your
wrong.
own, I think individuals who have experienced miracles like you have, even,
Yes,
little ones here and there, you're like,
right.
wow, if people only understood the magnitude of what I just experienced,
Oh
it could
yeah.
really change things. And there's so much out there, so much out there.
Well, there is. As I've mentioned before to you privately and sometimes to others, is that I've experienced half a dozen or 10 miracles at St. Elizabeth's here, and I talk to my priest all the time, and I've mentioned to him. He said, "Kevin, don't feel like the Lone Ranger. It happens all the time around here," and it really does. It's not that I'm all that holy or anything. It's just that it happens when you're a devout Catholic. And now I did talk to this one gal who was a devout Catholic, because I've been a Catholic all my life, and I never had anything like that. But she may be a pickle too. but what I'm saying is, she's a good-looking pickle, Will. But what I'm saying is, it does happen a lot. And even when I had that chill that went through me the first time I was going through the study course to become a Catholic, and I crossed myself with holy water the first 2 times, felt a chill go through my torso.
Yeah.
I told the deacon that, and he said, "Kevin, that happens all the time around here." In other words, these weren't being flippant about it. It's just a common thing. And
Right.
Father Gary, my priest, he said, "That's as common as sneezing around there." So it's
And even
good.
for us non-Catholics, we experience some things too. And I
Yeah,
just think that the presence of God is so much more than people realize, because, well, the church didn't
is.
acknowledge it 100%. It's like, oh,
I don't even mention some of the smaller things that happen because it's maybe not dramatic enough to intrigue listening
right.
audience or whatever. But I'm, for whatever it's worth, God does love me, and miserable old curmudgeon that I am, and I get little hunches sometimes, and they're almost invariably, positive and reassuring. And the best one I had personally, really, at the church was the one where I had that grieving feeling for a guy that was like a second father to me. I mentioned to you before, and I mentioned that to my priest, and he said, "Certainly, Kevin, you must not think that was a coincidence. I mean, you're not that thick-headed. You have to be hit over the head with a hammer." I mean, it was just kind of a reassuring thing that there's more to this than just the gravel and the parking lot and all that. And
Right.
it is reassuring. It really is. But I do think, yes, the church is a little too conservative with these things. But I've always wanted to write a book on initial experiences upon entering the Catholic Church, like I did, many years ago. And unfortunately, Catholic Digest, it used to be kind of like their version of Reader's Digest, is kind of, with magazines gone by the way, like many magazines have. But I was going to put an ad in there, and I was going to get people that were RCIA graduates, from the entry program, that have experiences like I had, that are kind of like spiritual pats on the head, if you will. And Heidi, I could write a book 500 pages long on those.
Wow.
I just don't know how to have access to that info like Catholic Digest would have been. But I guarantee you I could, Heidi. I mean, story after story after story. I mean, hundreds of them. And I know there were a couple of the people that were in my class that I did graduate from that did have similar kind of uplifting experiences. And, I'm not trying to be a creep about it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in other churches and all that, but it sure didn't happen in the Episcopal church I was connected with, or the Methodist either, boy. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't, but it didn't to me. And it's as common as dust on the road in the Catholic Church. So for whatever that's worth. I do think, I will say this. I do think there's a degree of devotion in the Catholic Church you don't find in some other denominations.
I don't think that's true. I mean, it's you don't know the hearts of the people.
Well, I mean, I just see people at daily mass that you don't usually see anywhere else. But at any rate, I can't split hairs because I don't have access to all the information. But we're right about at the bottom of the hour break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the 5 very well scientifically studied examples. Let's be back with Heidi. And Heidi, the other 5 that were all from the last 25 years are pretty well scientifically studied. And now most of my scientific preparation I had in college was in physics or electronics. It wasn't in anything medically oriented. But I was interested in other things in those times. But there's some really good Eucharistic miracles of the last 25 years. One of them, Heidi, was the parish of St. Mary in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Mm.
And this was actually Pope Francis was at the time the archbishop of that area that it had occurred. It happened in 96. And you had bleeding hosts. A host started bleeding when it was consecrated. That's the wafer. And part of it became human tissue.
Oh, gosh.
Now, they submitted this to, extensive examination. This wasn't just, a couple guys in the back room. I mean, really, it's 96. It isn't like, 1806 or anything. And and upon examination, it belonged to a person in intense pain, having trouble breathing. They could tell that from the tissue. And the tissue showed signs of being alive. And here's the evidence of it, was intact white blood cells.
Oh, my goodness. Now, wow.
See, I didn't know all about medicine. Like I say, I don't know enough medicine to stick in a thimble. But evidently, white blood cells cannot exist in tissue over 15 minutes outside the body. And now this is heavyweight stuff here.
Yeah.
And then it goes on from there. They had the parish of St. Martin's of Tours in 2006, and here we go. Tixtla, Mexico. Boy, I'm getting a linguistic language lesson tonight. See, all I remember from high school was I was in love with this French teacher and a certain other accoutrement she had. And in other words, I'm no great linguist. But, which is too bad because, my grandfather spoke 10 languages.
That's wild. That's a lot.
But I missed out on that. But anyhow, the host that was distributing at St. Martin's of Tours was showing red marks on it. They submitted to 2 studies of forensic experts using different methods that showed the blood coming from inside the host as opposed to just something you dolloped on them or something. Now, here's where the nitty gets gritty. The blood type was AB positive, the same type as other Eucharistic miracles and the Shroud of Turin.
Oh, wow.
A 2010... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just curious with these literally like physical things that are manifesting in front of people. Are they like pilgriming towards these things to seek miracles? Are miracles being reported alongside
No, these are just people.
Miracles?
No, these. Well, I don't know about ancillary miracles, but I mean the people that are examining this are just people like a priest, giving out the hosts. I mean, going through the normal service. I mean, it isn't.
But they keep these. They keep these things, like you said, that you could still go and visit some of these, and it's like, well,
oh yes,
are people
yes.
going
Everyone
there to seek a miracle for themselves as well.
Some are, but most of these originated just in a regular church service. See, that's all I'm saying.
Right, but
Now,
I mean, have there been like reported miracles in association with these miracles?
Yes, there have.
Oh, nice.
There have, and also not listed in this 5 I was going through, but there was a very famous apparition with Maria Esperanza. It was in Botania in South America, and they Venezuela, and they this went on for a period of years where there were visions of the Virgin Mary and apparitions, and during some of these apparitional events, the hosts would glow red.
Oh.
And there were many miracles connected with that, cures from this, that, or the other. I mean, look up Maria Esperanza on Google, and it'll show a whole Britannia. It'll show a whole potpourri of miraculous events that happened to it. And, of course, at Lourdes, there's a very excellent, I don't mean anything half-baked about it, medical department that's connected with Lourdes that investigates all the alleged cures. And there have been some cures that were just, Heidi, going back forever, that have just been like dumbfounding. I mean, people that were crippled for 30 years, and they go to Lourdes and they throw their crutches away. And I mean, this is not me making it up or anything else. I mean, you can see, matter of fact, a lot of times you'll see that at these places like Lourdes, you'll see the crutches they left.
I think that's so fascinating to me. I love those types of stories. Love them.
Oh, it's as true as true gets. And I mean, Heidi, there's people, like I say, that have been wheelchair ridden for, a couple decades and gone and walked out of there. I mean, this is not, and remissions of cancer when they were at the death's door from it. I mean, this is not, hocus pocus stuff. This is for real deal.
We have something like that in Wisconsin called Holy Hill, and you'll find crutches and wheelchairs where people just became healed and leave it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's been well reputed. And I mean, this is good stuff. This is uplifting stuff. And I don't care all these goatee pulling supposed know-it-all professors. Look, you get smacked in the face as you have by these things, and I have. And all the little MS degrees in physics make about as much difference as a Coca-Cola can. I mean, come on. I mean, this is when something, I will say this to the audience, and Heidi can verify the same. When you're faced with this kind of demonstrable vision of the holy, everything else is like so much dust. I mean, and all the supposed knowledge, all these people, yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, it leaves you in the dust is what it does. It's awesome. It's awe-inspiring is what it is.
It really is, yeah.
Now, further on this same miracle at St. Martin's in Mexico, a 2010 microanalysis showed much of the blood on the host had coagulated, but showed internally it was still seeping 4 years later. Studies also show, once again, the tissue was heart muscle, as in the Buenos Aires example. Now, in India, at Church of St. Mary, 2001, it occurred during a novena, series of prayers to St. Jude. The priest exposed the sacrament for adoration and saw 3 hosts with dots on them. Reported to the bishop, but now showed discernible face once again. That's mentioned in this section 2. And this is all, like I say, Heidi, this is all well studied. This is in the last 25 years. This isn't back in the 1300s.
I don't mind that loud helicopter. It sounds like Obama just got into town again.
Oh, yuck. Well, maybe somebody will shoot it down.
Oh, but, terrible.
Oh, no, I don't want him shot down. I just want him thrown in prison. But,
right,
by the way, I know. But in Venezuela in 91, at the Marian Shrine of Finca in Britannia, a priest divided the host into 4 parts. And he consumed one part, as is the normal, put the host back on the plate, and saw one piece had a red dot on it, and it continued to exude blood. Get this. It was analyzed by 500 different scientists of the World Health Organization. It matched other miracles in having an AB positive form of blood from a living heart tissue. It can be seen to this day. Remember, this is just 91. It's not that far back. But it can be seen to this day at the convent of the Augustinian nuns of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in Los Tegues, Tegues, in Venezuela. And the final one was in Poland, 2008. No, Heidi, here we go again. The parish of St. Anthony at Sokolka in Poland a host fell to the ground, and the priest thought it was dirty, so he put it in water. And the idea being is that it would dissolve in water, because they don't just throw hosts that have been, in the ash can. They just, have a more, dignified way of getting rid of them. But anyway, he put it in water with the idea that it would dissolve. But here's what happened. What happened was it didn't dissolve, and it looked like a blood clot.
Huh.
They had intense study. Two big-time Polish scientists, a woman named Elżbieta Sobaniak, I got through that one, Medical University of Białystok, and holy moly, a Professor Stanislaw Solkowski. These were two of the hottest medical professors they had in Poland. They studied these hosts independently, and Solkowski studied them without knowledge of their origin. They just said, look, study this. We're not going to give you a whole rundown. You just study it. And he said, okay. What happened was it was shown once again to be human cardiac tissue that was still alive. And both scientists who are the top scientists in medicine in Poland said without doubt, no one could replicate it. Both scientists agreed this was a miracle. Take it to the bank. Don't argue about it. It just was.
Why isn't this front page news? I mean, really?
Well, see, that's my issue that I've wondered before. And I'm not just trying to beat the drum for the Catholic Church. I mean, yes, there's good Christians in every denomination, even the Methodists. But what I'm saying, I just said that because you were. I'm just being silly. But I mean, because, actually one of the most formative women in my life was one of my babysitters, because my mother was a very rich woman that would go to the engineers convention in San Francisco, and she had to have somebody watch me, right?
Right.
And, my parents were divorced. You can't just leave me in a cage. and although if I was with the dogs, I wouldn't have cared. But what it was Mrs. Van Dusen was like my godmother or something, and she was a Presbyterian. And she's probably the most formative person in my whole life as far as Christianity. And she was a fine woman. But at any rate, what I'm saying is, obviously, I'm not against all Protestants or anything. I'm not silly. But what I'm saying is, these are things. That's the thing that dumbfounded me, Heidi. I'm glad you brought that up. It's like in the book I wrote on Marian apparitions. I'm thinking, what is the matter with people? They're worried about, like the guy that was going to write the foreword to it, the professor from TCU. He was saying, my goodness, people are just go shivers about some ghostly orb they might see at the
right.
What was that thing at the time a few years ago? The Transatlantic Ghost Society, whatever it was called. The two guys that would always have the ghost hunter show.
Oh, TAPS people, yeah.
TAPS, that's it. Yeah, I forget it was the Atlantic Paranormal Society. That's what it was. Okay. But I mean, everybody would just do double back flips for these guys, and they had a weekly show. They became millionaires instead of just the plumbers they were. And They did a credible job. But I mean, this was so minor league compared to this. This was baby stuff. People getting chills over, did we see an orb? Did the ghost playing cards in the closet or something, Right. And this is so much more majestic. And once again, I'm tying it back in with the stuff that we talked about earlier, like the image of the tilma of Juan Diego that was studied by Sandia Labs, the best testing facility in the world, physical testing facility. And people don't know, there's not one person in 5,000 that know they tested this tilma, and it was a miraculous object. And you're talking people with electron microscopes that could see anything.
Right.
No pigment, no tracing, couldn't replicate it if you had a 45 to their head. And really the same thing could be said about the Shroud of Turin.
Right.
But that's never had the testing that the tilmas had because, access to Sandia Labs, et cetera. So what I'm saying is, Heidi, you do scratch your head and say these things are so majestic, so powerful. so life-changing potentially. And it's like people either go ho-hum like it's all a bunch of Catholic stuff because they've got something against Catholicism, or else they don't realize, being Catholic, they don't realize how absolutely exasperatingly efficient they are in being exhausting and testing these things out and proving them. They take decades longer than they should.
Truly.
I mean, they don't realize take the enormity of what they're dealing with. We're talking about God here, man. We're not talking about the aliens coming
Or
by
ghosts.
doing a flyby or something, you know.
Right.
Or
Right.
Bigfoot jumping around the swamp in Florida, so what? But what it is, Heidi, is this is majestic stuff. And like I say in the Marian Apparitions book, I mean, this stuff is so well studied, Heidi. And Eucharistic miracles are fairly well known to Catholics, but frankly, not even Catholics talk about it much.
I've not heard of this before. It's
well, you went to
amazing.
a Catholic even. I mean, you would think the Catholics would be gassing about it all the time.
Well, yeah, I didn't hear about this stuff. I don't know. I was buried in schoolwork, but I didn't hear about it.
I know, hon, but I mean, like I go to St. Elizabeth's, they're not buzzing around about this all the time. They just take it in stride. Because, like I say, when you're talking about a church where so many things happen that I mentioned things that happened to me that to the priest is, it's okay, Kevin, it's just standard fare around here. I mean, he wasn't putting me down, but he was saying, grab a number, But I mean, in other words, they live with it all the time. And what I meant by the devout business before the break was like, I'll go in, I told you before, I'm kind of like one of those old Sicilian women. I'll go in a couple times a week and light a candle sometimes. And every week for sure, sometimes twice a week, usually once, I guess. But I mean, I'm always doing that. And the same bunch is there all the time when they've got time off. And this one guy, he practically lives at the church because sometimes on Saturday I'll go to the Saturday morning service,
Right,
instead of the Sunday, because Heidi, I'm a claustrophobic. I don't like crowds.
you went to Vegas.
I know, but I was drunk. No, I wasn't. I wasn't drunk that much. That's really not true. I'd have a couple drinks and let them go. But in past years I've been drunk, but no, it wasn't as crowded as all that, really, if you want to know the truth. It wasn't as crowded as going to a church that holds 2,500 people, and they've got standing room along the walls and even in the vestibule in the front where it's standing room only. That gives me, that's why I couldn't stand Mardi Gras in New Orleans. Now that was a good example. Shoulder to shoulder, I was thinking, get me out of here, because I mean, I've been in many dangerous situations in my life, but I can't stand crowd scenes. That's why I can't stand Manhattan. I love New York. I just can't stand Manhattan because you're armpit to armpit with people. So what I'm saying is, it's just an everyday experience. It should be something that everybody should talk about, that should be part of the common knowledge. And Heidi, it's just not.
Right.
And I don't really know the answer why it's not.
Makes no sense. You want to bring people to the church, and I think things like this would really intrigue people. People love mysteries. They love inspirational stories. Why not inform the public? It sounds like you need to write another book, Kevin, in all honesty.
I probably do on Eucharistic miracles. I probably do.
Miracles, period. That's not, miracles in general that are not widely known in the Catholic Church. That would be a great title.
Well, it really would. I was really gonna want to write one, as I mentioned earlier, about the ones that aren't entering the RCA class, kind of little entry level, like the chill things I experienced and subsequent things. It's really good stuff. It's as true gets. No one's going to make this up. And like the stuff we just talked about in the Eucharistic miracles, we're talking about scientific testing labs, the best professors that, Poland's not that small a country. And if they get the two best forensic pathologists in the country, they're good, believe me. I mean, they could probably stand with anybody, right? And many of the others have, the Italians are great scientists, always have been. And, they've examined a lot of these miracles and the ones we discussed the last 25 years and just take it to the bank. This is true stuff.
Right.
And remember that Russ Brialta was just on with us. Everybody and his brother, not quite as much examination available to the shroud as other things, but still, there's been some examination physically, and this is not a con. The Catholic Church is not a con job as far as the miracles or anything else. If anything, once again, they're very conservative in what they represent as being true, and they kind of look at it, Heidi, as it buoys the faith up, but your faith should already be there anyway, is kind of what it is. That's what they do. But in a nutshell, though, you're still right that people should know something that's so miraculous. It should certainly deserve more attention than the ghosts or the Bigfoot or the UFOs popping and bopping around.
I prefer that. I really would prefer to have the Christian miracles forward more than the other stuff, because I think they're definitely more impressive. They change lives more.
Well, I got one for you on a lesser scale. I'll tell you this just before the break. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
There's a guy that's a relative of a friend of mine. She's my business partner's wife. And her brother is an evil buzzard. I mean, gets in fights all the time. He's a bully. He's cruel to animals, and all this. Here's what happened. Now, this will blow your mind. For some reason, this guy was drawn to a illuminated cross on the side of the road in Texas. Okay, and he took a photo of it. I don't know why. This guy's not a church-oriented guy. Probably hadn't been to church in years. Okay. Okay. What happened was he took this photo with his cell phone. Okay. Now, after he took the photo, he saw a figure of an illuminated angel, not with distinct features, but basically the outline to the left of this cross that was not there when he took the photo. And this guy, believe me, doesn't have the technical knowledge nor the inclination to phony anything up. This guy's like a curmudgeon kind of guy.
Yeah.
And if I ever got around him, he was mean to animals, he'd be a crippled curmudgeon guy. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But what I'm saying is, and this woman showed me the photo, but gets even dicier. She did not know about a photo. Do you remember about a year ago, someone was in an accident scene, and they took a photo of a fatal accident site?
Oh,
and
yes.
they to the left of the same figure was a angelic-looking figure.
Right.
This figure matched exactly the one in this guy's photo.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And this guy's just a stumble bum waiting to get an insurance settlement. He has no more technical expertise than the garbage man,
Right.
And he's just a curmudgeon, and he's not going to try to promote churchy things. And he gave it to his sister, who just showed me. He didn't give it to the public to sell. So what I'm saying is these things happen all around us. That's all I'm really trying to say in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
And people just do not appreciate it.
They really don't. They don't. And I don't understand how or why. I just really don't. And like you say,
do you think it could be that some people
too?
Do you think it's that some people are drawn to it and some are not?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of grudges out there in the world still in regards to the scandal. And they're like, well, if they could lie about that, they could lie about anything. And I think some people turn a blind eye because of it. But I also think that people don't know to look for it. Like, I would have never thought, I bet there's things called Eucharistic miracles out there. I would have never guessed.
Yeah.
I would have never known. I never heard of it.
Oh, it's a whole field of study.
Yeah, not even
it's a whole study. You could spend the rest of your life studying it. And like I say, these are high-level professionals. And also the ones in Mexico. They've got good doctors, too.
Well, how do you reach the person like myself who is pretty informed in odd stories, miracles even, and I've never heard of such a thing? Just because I'm not Catholic, you didn't think to let a person like me know or not advertise?
Well, I wrote a book on Marian apparitions, and I knew there were Eucharistic miracles, but something pushed me into having this show.
Oh, yeah. But I'm saying, like, to the Catholic Church, they don't advertise to a person like myself. It's like, how do they reach people like me,
Well, you usually wouldn't, because as a norm, like I say, you'd have to probably be a Catholic to even be able to discover there were Eucharistic miracles,
Right.
because
Right.
like if there are these places like in Italy and Poland, you could see the physical evidence, but you'd have to already be going to mass there or something.
Right.
But we're just about, in just a few minutes, we're going to go to our top of the hour break, top of the hour break. But when we get back, maybe we could look up that St. Januarius one, which is another Eucharistic miracle that you have access to and I don't, because of the
I have it here. Pretty cool.
But I will say about Vegas, though, it is an intriguing place. It's kind of silly, but the thing that I really actually enjoyed was just getting up for a change of scenery. And there's better scenery, yeah, certainly, but still, it was a good outing, and it's
well,
no allergies.
How do you feel about that Houston hurricane? Not too far. Well, I mean, it's a good distance from you, but.
Well, I tell you what, we'll talk about it when we get right back. We'll be right back. Yeah, Heidi, we're mentioning the deal with the miracles, but put a period to it, Heidi. I really don't know. It amazed me, Heidi, because until I got into Catholicism, I might have heard a glimmer of something here and there, or there was a movie back in the day about Fatima that I watched, and I was intrigued by that, when I was a kid. And actually, that was out of the foundation of my love for Catholicism and all that. But what I'm saying, though, is mostly you hear nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, it's a shame.
And I didn't know about Eucharistic miracles at all till I actually became a Catholic.
Yeah, and you guys keep secrets or something. I don't know.
Well, not really. I mean, nobody's holding it from you. It's just, I don't know what the reason is. It's almost like people are he draws the ones he wants to it.
Right. I hear you.
And I know there's some priestly shenanigans, but that has no bearing on this whatsoever. Think, oh, by the way, from being a Protestant minister in a past life, you must know they've got their own skeletons in the closet, too.
Oh, huge.
So, I mean, it's, in other words, there's frailties in human nature. It's just there's a lot more priests. There's a lot more opportunity for flaws, But it's just that, but mankind is always crummy. But the real truth and beauty in this is it's as true gets. You could examine. I mean, you're not going to do any better than Sandia Labs. I don't care what Rusky you got to just look at it, or German Lab, or anybody else. This is good stuff. Yeah. So I urge everybody to look it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to, put thoughts and prayers out there to the folks in Houston. I mean, you share the same state. And, that had to be troubling to an extent. You were in Vegas, though, but to see the stuff.
Oh, I was watching a lot of it on Fox News. See, by the way, on a happier note, even though my wonderful Megyn Kelly shoved off, Fox News has replaced her with 10 times more. There's a new show they've got called The Five. And let me tell you something. I don't know how they cast these women for their parts, but if you went to a strip joint and picked the 5 prettiest women out of every strip joint, and then had a selection process to see who could read the news well, that's who they picked.
Oh my goodness!
In other words, you've got to be a Playboy starlet to make the Fox News. But getting back to the story, though, they had excellent coverage of this terrible event, and I was watching it when I was in Vegas, quite a bit of it. Some of it was repetitive, but Heidi, we're talking about amazing difficulty these poor guys have been through. Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, Heidi, Kingswood is it's a upscale northern suburb of Houston, okay? And what happened was, it wasn't bad enough that the place flooded, but the sewage got loose from the local sewage, flooded out.
Right. Too. And they're trudging through it. It's gross.
They're trudging through it. I mean, really, Heidi, all that's good that place is good for is a bulldozer. I mean, I don't know anything so precious that you slop the sewage off of it to keep it, And, but that's how rough it was. And, but there has been a tremendous groundswell of help coming to those people, more than I've ever seen. There's that one J.J. Watt. He's a football player from the Houston Texans. He's raised $25 million.
In such a short time.
Yeah. Walmart, through its auspices, has raised north of $25 million, and just on and on and on. I mean, we've seen many, many different companies similar responded very well, and a lot of people have done more than that. They've come over from Louisiana. They got airboats and stuff, and fishing dogs and people out of the drink. And
do you know that the big effort from Chicagoans was coming down and getting people's strayed pets and bringing them back here?
Good, yes, I'd heard of things like that. I didn't know the connection.
A lot of them. Yeah. Oh my gosh,
good. That's good.
I was floored. But it looks like we're going to have to do this all again because Hurricane Irma is about to bear down. It's just crazy. This weather's crazy.
Well, it is, but like I say, unfortunately, see, most hurricanes that hit Florida aren't that bad. I mean, a hurricane, number 5 on the scale hurricane is very rare. Usually they're milder hurricanes like a category 1 or 2. And I'm not minimizing it, I mean, it's still dangerous. But you got to understand, Miami's practically underwater already. It really needs to have, dikes like Holland to protect it, does. And I know with global warming and sea level rising, I know that's an issue. I know that. But what I'm saying is a category 5 is a rare commodity. I mean, rare. Usually in Florida, I lived part of my life in Florida. And usually what it is a hurricane will come up the coast and it'll take a northeastern swath and it'll slice around a piece of Florida, then go out to sea and take a northern path, maybe hit Cape Hatteras in North Carolina, and then go up off the Jersey coast or something. But it gets, more worn down the further colder waters it goes in. But the bad ones, and thankfully this one doesn't look like it's going to do that, would have given a 1-2 punch to the Gulf Coast. Because, see, when they go in a pattern that cuts around the Horn of Florida up into the Gulf Coast, the waters are warmer off the Gulf than they are off the Atlantic. And with the warm waters, it picks up more speed. Now, Can you imagine a 1-2 punch for Houston after that?
Crazy.
I mean, that would have really been deadly. I mean, you're talking, kiss it goodbye deadly.
Well, they're saying this one is much worse than usual. I guess the ones that are usually formed over, Cape Verde or something, that's they're more powerful coming from that region or something. I'm like, wow.
Well, in the direction it's taking and the speed it's got, it's going to hit Florida probably as a 5.
Yeah. And
then it'll dissipate as it goes further north, yes. But, I mean, you're talking about just the storm surge alone. There's no telling. I mean, the water being pushed by the hurricane itself, not the rain, but just the water surge. I mean, like I say, it doesn't take anything to flood Miami.
Well, what I'm reading right now is the most highest sustained winds on record was 190 miles per hour. And Irma is 185 miles per hour. Yep.
190 is the absolute max, really?
It was Hurricane Allen in 1980. And
really?
And then in second place is Irma.
Wow, so you're talking serious storms.
Yes, but there's other storms, Gilbert, Wilma, and Labor Day. They called it Labor Day, were 185 as well. So crazy.
So this is right up there at the max. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Heidi, it usually gets a little stronger just before it hits.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, see, that's the trouble in living in these areas. I mean, you're talking about, oh my goodness, it's so fragile, Heidi. I mean, I've been in Houston, for example. I was driving through there years ago when they had a lousy 5 or 6 inch rain. And the highways were passable, yes, because they were elevated and all that. But what I'm saying is I was looking down at the city from the lousy 5 and 6 inch rain, which is not that uncommon.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Nashville, got 12 inches, which was the remnant of the hurricane that hit Texas, Harvey. So, I mean, all the way to Nashville was 12 inches. So I'm saying 5 or 6 inches, no big deal. But you looked at Houston with 5 or 6 inches, you're thinking, my God, they're going to lose homes out of this. And this thing was a magnet. This was like 50 inches of rain.
50, I know. It's like,
I mean, just over 4 foot. It was crazy.
That's a lot.
And believe me, these people, and I was talking to Joe before the show, one of the other problems, which hasn't been mentioned, is Heidi, they have a lot of nasty chemical plants. That was one thing I never could stand living in Houston, was the smell of the place. In different, not all of it, but I mean different locations, the eastern part of the city especially, around Beaumont and all that, and because they have terrible chemical plants. And they're not making like, nice things. They're making like, blow your head off kind of stuff. I mean, toxic stuff. And these waters have swamped these toxic chemical plants and released a lot of these terrible chemicals into the ecosystem.
So it's absorbed into the houses, the grounds, the food.
The wildlife, everything. I mean, this is some bad stuff.
The wildlife ending up inside of people's homes.
Well, you had other weird things happen, like I guess was covered in your area. Is what happened was the waters killed the cooling generators to some chemical plant.
Yeah.
And whatever the chemicals weren't cooled, so they were combustible, and you had terrible fires with this awful smoke from this toxic chemical going all over. I mean, this is tough stuff. But I mean, it's just a rough place. I wouldn't live in Houston anymore. I'd California first. And that's saying something. I mean, that's like, I'm not a California fan, but I would move to LA before I'd live in Houston.
That's saying a lot.
It is. But I mean, Houston's just a tough place. And it's also, oh my goodness, under the best of circumstances, it's 95 degrees every day and 100% humidity.
Oof.
It's a lot like Jacksonville. To be honest with you. But Jacksonville's like that, only it's prettier. But
a lot of Chicagoans move straight to Houston, and I'm not kidding. My niece moved to Houston just a few days, maybe 5 days before the hurricane hit. And
really?
Luckily,
what time?
Yeah, luckily she is fine. She didn't have any flooding where she was, kept her electricity. She was very fortunate.
Well, for the only thing that hit up here was it just lasted a couple of days, was there was a gas shortage. But just regular automobile gas, but that only lasted a day or two. I got gas the very next day. But in San Antonio, like I mentioned on the news, that's a big old town, and they were absolutely out of gas.
Wow.
To see, and here in this area, they can bring it down from Oklahoma because we're only 100 miles from the Oklahoma border. And, there's plenty of other refineries. I'm sure Chicago wasn't affected negatively from Gulf Coast refineries. But there's also, I can't emphasize enough how bad the chemicals are down there that they're manufacturing.
Crazy.
I mean, Jersey, unfortunately, I like Jersey, but it's a rough place for chemicals too. And Jersey and South Texas is where all the nasty stuff is developed.
Terrible.
And Jersey usually, we get this with a hurricane, it's usually not kind of mild since it's so far north. But I mean, this is some interesting material, and I don't know, Heidi. It's just we'll come back. We'll talk about the global warming and some other issues. But
okay.
I don't know, Heidi. I know there's global warming. You'd have to be an idiot not to realize that the temperatures have gone up compared to what they were when I was younger. But, the obvious records of the average temperature going up. But what I'm saying is I don't know what's causing it, and I don't think they do either. But you could surmise, but we don't know. Anyhow, we'll be right back.
Yeah.
It could be. We'll be right back after our last break. We'll be right back. Well, Heidi, it's good to be back with you. Now, I was going to tell you about the fabled evil brother-in-law we've talked about on the show before.
Yes.
What happened was he cut his toes with some glass. He was in sandals, and he cut his toe with some glass. evidently his diabetes has gone to the point where I guess they get so they don't heal well or something.
Yeah.
And he got gangrene in the foot, and they had to lop 2 toes off.
That's typical of diabetics.
It does happen that way?
Oh, gosh, yes. I thought he'd gone and got his diabetes reversed.
Well, he took the stem cells, but it didn't take.
I thought it did at one point.
It did initially, but then he receded. In other words, it wasn't a cure. He did try in Mexico. Yes, he did. But it didn't take.
I've had several patients reverse their diabetes, just so you know, full-blown diabetes, and a sister of mine, where
with
they're
stem
not
cells or
no, just losing the weight and getting active.
Oh no, I've heard of that before. Before. But it depends on what stage you are and how it's developed. And I understand this guy's about 6'2", and he's been as high as 300 pounds for many years. And I mean, he's the kind of guy. Well, imagine eating 2 double hamburgers at a session. And I'm talking about with fries and milkshakes and all that. I mean, nobody.
Maybe that's who you spotted in Vegas.
No, these are bigger than him. But I mean, we're talking about people that would just blow your mind. But what I'm saying is, I don't wish that on him. I mean, I have some fondness for him in spite of his evil. But I mean, they had to lop 2 toes off, and my understanding is he may have to wind up losing the foot.
Wow.
But I have heard that. I have heard that certain extreme diabetics can, I guess, what is it, the vein system just deteriorates or infection set in? Or?
Yeah, it's like if you're diabetic and you have to get surgery, period, or something, or you get a cut anywhere, it just does not heal like a regular person without diabetes. It's a terrible blood circulation just reduces. It just doesn't heal the same.
I don't really have that problem. Of course, I'm just a borderline diabetic. I'm not really pure diabetic. It's a dog. What I do is the dog get in fights all the time, and they wind up biting me because they're trying to bite the other dog. And my arm's full of scars and cuts. And I heal pretty quick. I mean, like almost instantly. So I guess my diabetes isn't that bad. But.
No, you don't. I don't think you have diabetes, but it's so crazy really. Though. I don't know if you've heard of the wonderful supplement of turmeric, and I was taking turmeric.
Oh yes, I take turmeric every day.
Oh, let me tell you, this is crazy. So I was taking turmeric for maybe 6 months, and I noticed I was starting to bruise easily, and I'm like, and if I got a scratch, it just bled, and I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, leukemia. These are like symptoms of that. I go to my doctor, and they're like, oh, do you know that turmeric does this to you? It thins your blood out and causes easy bruising and bleeding. I'm like, oh my goodness. So that's something to beware and know that happens. So
well, I take it. It has other. I was listening to Coast to Coast shows, and it was supposed to be so wonderful about turmeric. So I've been taking it. And I don't have any diabetes, but
I was taking it too, and not a good thing to spend too much.
Oh, gee whiz. Actually, that's the trouble is that my doctor told me once, and he was an allergist I was going to, because there's bad allergies in Texas with the pollens and the dust that comes down from the desert. He said he knew a guy that could hold a peach pit in his hand and have an allergic reaction. In other words, it was such an extreme case of allergy.
Yeah.
And there's people that have simple dimple stuff like, some compound you'd find anywhere like raisins or something. And there's people that would croak from that, And it's just, there's amazing variety of human reactions to common compounds is what I'm saying.
I have a lot of allergies. And the one cool element that I learned about people with allergies, like Joe, who's sneezing like crazy today, is people with allergies have a greater reduction of getting cancers because our bodies fight everything. So I'll take my allergies. I'll take my allergies and enjoy them.
Oh, I didn't think about that, but I guess their systems are in a battle with everything all the time. Yeah.
Constantly. It does wear you down because you feel like you have a cold all the time. And that gets really aggravating. Yeah.
In the summer, I'm that way. But, when I go to Vegas, that's one of the things I did like about Vegas is that, of course, if you fly into Vegas, you probably have sometime, haven't you? Or
Oh, yeah.
have you? Well, what I'm saying is, everything's dead around there. There's nothing growing in green. So
Right.
you don't have the pollens that you'd have other places. And it's like a big allergy load is off of me when I go to Vegas. And also when I go as eastbound as Mississippi, I kind of feel good there. But what I'm saying is that it was a break from that standpoint.
Right.
But, oh, man, I mean, I know what I was going to say is one thing I'm glad I don't have, and I hope you don't have, is do you have a nut allergy?
No.
Good, because, I mean, I would kill me because I'm vegan and a lot of my protein comes from nuts and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had a nut allergy, I might have to just pass away right then. Because, I mean, you can only get out, you can only come up with proteins from just so many places.
That's true.
But matter of fact, after the show's over, the trial and I'll probably eat a hand of cashews or something together. But she looks at that as a big treat. But no, Heidi, that was interesting subject matter we had earlier, though. It really was. And
it is, yeah.
I really don't understand why this is a hidden issue. Like you went to a Catholic college, you got degrees, and you've been interested, you had religious experiences, and yet this was an uncharted waters for you.
Truly.
And like myself, in my former life, I was even an ordained Anglican deacon. And a clergyman, and I didn't know anything about Eucharistic miracles to speak of. And you would think that it would truly be common knowledge, but it's not. And I don't understand how these things can be hidden from the public, because the Catholic Church does not try to cover them up in any way, shape, or form. I mean, you could go to Lourdes and look at, crutches and all the remnants of miracle cures, and you can go tour any one of these Eucharistic miracle sites I mentioned if you could get over there, and see the. Did you look up the blood of Janarius? You said, or did you?
I did. It says blood of Saint Janarius has failed to liquefy at the expected time, prompting concerns about what it might signify. I don't quite follow what.
I think this blood had been liquefying and solidifying alternately on a certain date for a couple hundred years or something.
Oh, so it goes solid and then liquefies. So they're.
Well, if you don't have the data on it, we'll bring it up on the next show and as a follow up. But we'll update the audience.
It seems like they're questioning that it did not do as its usual time.
As it always has. That's what it was. But I mean, it had been doing this miraculous function for ever and a day, and all of a sudden it didn't. They didn't know what
it says. His blood is kept in a sealed glass and traditionally liquefies 3 times a year on September 19th, December 16th, and the Saturday before the first Sunday of May. But it just did not this past December 2016.
And they've had their mitts on this blood of Janarius since how long does it say? Does it say? Or?
Around the year 305, who's believed to have been martyred around the year 305. Wow.
Okay, that's see here, nobody's ever heard of that either till I brought it up,
That's crazy. Never heard of such a thing.
Well, see, that's the thing. There's so many miracles associated with the church that, just tremendous amounts of things. There really are. And what also, in doing the book on Marian apparitions, I found out is, of course, I highlighted the ones that were fairly public knowledge, like Fatima and, Lourdes and all that. But for every one of those, there's like 1,000 personal revelations they've had, like you had with your Jesus appearances and stuff like that.
Right.
So that you're talking about untold numbers that are just for the individual for the most part and not for general publication. And this is phenomenal stuff, Heidi. It really is. It's such a laborious task writing a book, you write them all the time. So Nick Redfern writes them, during lunch, but I found it, onerous. But it does need to be written.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Well, it does. I don't know. What's coming up Friday for you,
I have Laurie McDonald coming on. She's going to be speaking about various alien and UFO sightings and encounters and military abductions.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's
fun
pretty darn
stuff.
good. Well, I don't know. I'm gonna have to take that in, I guess. But
It'll be fun.
We've got some good shows coming up too. And it's good to be back on the air. Like I say, we had a little hiatus, and
yeah, nice to have a little vacation every once in a while.
Well, I needed it. I hadn't been off for quite a while, and
Same here.
I kind of want to get off to the mountains sometime, and I think I'll do that.
Cool.
Sometime. I may go up to New York this winter for a little bit.
Nice.
I want to go when it's as cold as possible. But anyway, I guess we better tell these fellows a good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.